Hi, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whichever part of the world you're joining in from. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I have a special guest, Mr. Charles Carvalho. I should also add here, by this time next year, he'll be Dr. Charles Carvalho. He's currently doing his PhD with Tata Institute of Social Science, and he's also a practicing HR professional. He has written many peer-reviewed, published, articles in peer-reviewed journals. um, so when we were talking about what coaching is happening in many organizations and has it caught up as a main agenda of the board, and how coaching is prevalent in many of the organizations vis-a-vis India and across other geographies. Charles and I started thinking about coaching cultures, and he is the one who proposed this topic. And we were talking about how this is yet another fad, or is it a strategic imperative? Typically, a strategic imperative is where the entire organization is moving towards a direction with a lot of urgency and importance. That's what a strategic imperative for all of us is. Coaching culture, or establishing, sustaining, and curating coaching culture, a strategic imperative, or is it just another fad like many other jargons and new concepts have come and gone, right? That is the premise of this conversation today. um, so we are talking about coaching culture in the context of an organization. If you're a SME, if you are a business owner, if you have a very small business, even then this applies. So all the concepts that we are going to talk about are from various inspiration from our work life, from our experience, and mostly all opinion from both of us. We are going to have a free flow conversation. We may point out to few sources where a good understanding of this topic can be further acquired. So stay with us, and please do share your questions, comments on the chat window, and stay safe. So without further ado, hi Charles, thank you so much for agreeing to be part of our community here.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
And you have written many articles along with your friends and family, I should say. We have had this conversation earlier, how you are into academics right from the beginning, and you are a lawyer by profession. That's what I understood from your background. And then you moved to HR, and you have had stints in various organizations, family owned as well as corporates, with larger footprint across various geographies. So you have a very fairly established career path, and HR is your passion, and you have now you are into a coach training program, and you're also getting certified as a PCC with ICF soon. And this journey of human resource as a main domain and coaching as a passion, how did this happen? Could you please elaborate and tell us about your journey?
Yeah. So I'm someone. If I look at my one of the tools that I love, Bhaskar, is the Clifton Strengths Finder, and I really love the strengths philosophy. So for those of the people on this meeting who are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita talks about a concept called the Swadharma, and the Swadharma is your natural duty or your natural calling. And I've been someone who's often wondered what is my natural calling, and hence I've been very curious to find, the true Charles in the sense. And
Mm,
I think this quest for asking myself, who is this true Charles? What is his calling? Led me down very interesting paths. So I pursued a lot of things that I was very curious about, naturally inclined to, and I'm very, very happy to say that I found this Swadharma in learning and development. So for me, Monday mornings are very exciting because I really look forward to what I do. The challenges that I encounter are super fun. And there's this book that many of us have read called Ikigai, which
Yes.
speaks about your purpose, your reason for being. And learning and development is something that I really swear by. I really love learning and development. It's something that pays the bills, but it's much more than just something that pays the bills. And yeah, within the learning and development space, while there are so many interesting things that we are fortunate enough to do, but I find coaching to be fascinating because it really addresses the core of learning and development, which this concept of adult learning, and Malcolm Knowles speaking about how adults learn differently from kids, and coaching respects the adult. It says that every person can make his or her choices. So coaching is perfectly in sync with what Malcolm Knowles and Andragogy talks about, is that you allow adults to self-direct their learning, and that's when learning becomes very powerful. So Charles should not be telling Bhaskar that this is what you need to learn, but rather create a space where Bhaskar can find his or her, his own passion or his own chart out his own learning journey. So that's what gets me excited about L&D and coaching, Bhaskar.
Perfect, perfect. And as you rightly said, coaching is all about self-directed learning, where empowerment is the central theme of coaching, where the individual feels that he or she has got the control over their life, and they have been successful and they want to become even more successful. And
Absolutely.
the equation that often talked about when we are defining coaching is how can potential be equal to performance if we remove the interference, right? So that's a very powerful start for our conversation today. And when we are talking about coaching, it's not just the one-on-one professional setting, a conversation between a coach and the client. We are talking about every conversation in an organization, be coach like, where a manager and a team member, where two team members, or a team member and a customer, or a team member and a partner vendor, and so on. When every conversation is from a mindset of a coach, which is non judgmental, staying curious, at the same time asking an open-ended question to invite more conversation from the other person, where they can figure out whatever challenges they are facing or whatever aspirations they are now working on. They can figure a way out or a path to through that obstacle. So that's what coaching culture all about. And when we talk about coaching culture, is it a utopian situation where it's really impossible for a high performing organization which is chasing a target, being driven, where time is of essence? Can coaching really happen? Or is it just a concept where when we are at leisure, when we have no pressure of time or performance, is that the reason or a place or a time when coaching could work in organization? That's a going on debate right now. What is your view, Charles?
Yeah, yeah. No, first of all, great question, Bhaskar, and let me answer it by saying yes and no. So one uh, is, there's a quote by Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's business partner, and he says, "To a man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail." So, what that means is that if Charles believes in coaching, then he'll try and force fit coaching everywhere. So, where coaching is not required, he'll still say coaching is the best solution. And I really want to caution people that while coaching is very powerful, it does not apply in every context. It should not be force fit in every context. And hence, what is very important is, before you get into coaching, do a diagnosis of your org culture. And the Octopace is a beautiful tool by Dr. Uday Parikh to understand whether your organization's culture will allow, at what maturity are you in terms of how much of coaching will be feasible initially. And if you realize that some of these cultural nuances allow for coaching, then what you should do is slowly introduce it. So I believe in this concept of dating before marriage. So do not get into anything by saying that I have decided that coaching is the best solution, because then it becomes about you. Coaching is about the client, it's about the organization. So yes, coaching will work in a fast-paced culture. It will work in different contexts, but it is not a magic pill that can be force-fitted on everything under the sun. And anyone who's intends to do justice to coaching will realize the power of the tool, but also the limitations of the tool.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, when there is a lack of knowledge or skill at a team member's end, that's not when coaching need to be applied. When there
Absolutely.
is a
If there's an immediate fire in the factory,
yeah,
there's an issue, there's a labor unrest. That's not the time for the HR manager to go there and ask, what do you think? This thing,
yeah,
and thought provoking questions. That's the time where you need to address the issue and make some movement ahead. But yes, after that fire has been taken care of, then you can get into a reflective conversation on how we can prevent this. What led to this situation? So that's why the answer is yes or no. It is contextual, and good practitioners realize the power, but also realize when to use this particular tool.
absolutely. And like in a traditional coaching conversation between two individuals, where there is a knowing doing gap, coaching fills that gap, where
Absolutely.
a coach brings in a lot of expertise and experience in handling how to unstuck a client from a situation where
Yeah,
they really want to move forward. They have the inspiration, they have the urge, they have the urgency. However, they are unable to get unstuck. That's when coaching helps the individual. Similarly, when we look at organization as an individual, lot many of these conversations can get people unstuck at various levels, at various locations, whether it's a sales a team member working remotely with a manager who's sitting in the headquarters, who's the only umbilical cord with the company, right? I have been a
yeah,
salesperson. I know it's very difficult to think of a company beyond the manager, because day in and day out, my conversations are with my manager who's sitting at
yeah,
the headquarters, approving my bills, fighting for my appraisal, and so on. So, a coaching conversation with my manager is going to create employee engagement, or my connect with the organization much more stronger and robust. There has
correct.
been multiple publications, right, Charles, by various organizations, uh, kind of showing the line of sight between coaching culture and employee engagement. So there is a recent research published by ICF which says only 13% organizations have shown they have coaching culture, and of those, the employee engagement scores are really high. The remaining, the employee engagement scores are up to 65% are disengaged from work.
Yeah, yeah,
So this is really a concern right now, especially right in the middle of a pandemic where we are
yeah.
debating over remote working, hybrid working, and so on. So, what is the essence of coaching in your view, Charles?
Yeah, yeah. So I think before I answer this question, Bhaskar, I just want to go back to your previous question where you spoke about, is this a fad or a strategic imperative? And I'm a big fan of the work of Nassim Taleb, and
Yeah.
Nassim Taleb is the author of The Black Swan and Fooled by Randomness. And I think every time I open Nassim Taleb's book, I learn something new about life in general. And we're in very interesting times in humanity where we were all smart people. We thought science has all the answers, but COVID has taught us to be a little humble. COVID has told us that, hang on, you don't know as much about the world as you think you do. And even after a couple of years, we're still trying to figure out so many things about COVID. And I think this is a beautiful metaphor for organizations. So today, no organization can claim to know 100% about all the challenges it faces, about what its customers want, and hence a coaching approach taken by the senior leadership will really encourage people to really listen there's a big layer between the senior management and the people, in the front line. So can they adopt a more coaching approach and listen to people? So now, to answer your next question, what really is coaching? And I love this acronym called the CAT. Coaching for me is the CAT. And what is CAT? CAT C stands for curiosity. So you don't know everything. So how can you really pause and say, Bhaskar, can you tell me a bit about the situation at hand? That's the C. A stands for accountability. Bhaskar, I trust you to figure things out and take the right calls because you are close to action. You're really in the thick of things. And T stands for trust. So, how do I really trust three things? One, I trust you, my coachee. I trust this coaching process. And finally, I trust this relationship that both of us have the best interest for our organization. And yes, like someone says, we have to let the cat out of the bag. So this combination of curiosity, accountability, and trust is a magic potion when it happens in any relationship. And unfortunately, Bhaskar, what I've realized is the higher you go in an organization, the more you think that I have figured it out. I have all the answers. So you, as a child, you have a lot of curiosity. But I'm a father to two lovely daughters, and I find themselves so naturally curious. But when
Yeah.
we grow up, we realize that we feel that we have all the models, we have all the answers, we have all the solutions, and that really inhibits our ability to approach things with natural curiosity. So, not just curiosity, we start with curiosity, but we move to accountability. That you, at the end of the day, have a mandate, you have a goal to accomplish. So, you have to be accountable. And I trust you that you have enough skin in the game to achieve that goal. So curiosity, accountability, and trust, when you put together, I don't think you need any other model of coaching, Master. This in itself is the essence of coaching.
Absolutely. And in the beginning, you said if every problem appears to be a nail, and the only tool you need is hammer, right? Or if only tool you have is hammer, every problem
Yeah,
appears to be nail. So we are not
absolutely.
evangelizing coaching in such a way that it is the only solution, right?
Absolutely not.
The
Sometimes
situation.
your situation will require mentoring. If there's a new, if Charles has just joined the organization, doesn't know what's happening in the organization, Charles may need a mentor at that stage. In
Yeah.
some time, there is something in Charles's background, which there is some trauma. So Charles may need counseling at that stage. If Charles is working on a new problem, he may need consulting to come up with some solutions. So coaching is not a one size fits all, and smart practitioners know the limitations. And that's so I like to look at these things as toolkits. You have a
Yeah.
toolkit with you, and at the right time, training, a very powerful intervention. Sometimes you need training. There are knowledge and skills that you have to build. So not
Yeah.
coaching everywhere, absolutely not.
And Dr. Rao is asking about the role of mentoring.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
also alluded to a situation that we are in right now, and you quoted Nicholas Taleb's work, where unknowns are more than knowns now, right? And you mentioned about not having any perfect template for success. So
absolutely.
learn on the fly has become very critical, and every professional skill, as we know, like mentoring, coaching, counseling, consulting, has its place, and we need to figure out what is the right tool at that particular situation and keep moving. And agile is the word that resonates with all of us, right? We got to be really agile.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There are a few more comments on our platforms. I'll just read out one for you. Being a coach as opposed to adopting coaching as a technique in one's managerial style, there is a key difference. Absolutely. Right. And in fact, when we talk about coaching as a style and how it is going to help uh, organization in creating as many opportunities for people to be coached, how does it work? How can coaching help organizational processes?
Yeah, yeah. So I think Before I get into this, Bhaskar, again, you
Yeah.
spoke about coaching as a leadership style, and I would invite everyone on this call to, look up this HBR paper by Daniel Goleman, where he talks about coaching being one of the 6 leadership styles. And I think
Mm.
it's a beautiful paper because very nicely, rather than force-fitting coaching everywhere, Daniel Goleman invites us to look at coaching as one of the options that could help a leader, and it's not necessary for the leader to use this every time. Now, coming to your question that how can coaching help other org processes, and I think this is a fabulous question because it's a question that has so many possibilities, Master. Uh, Before I get into this, again, what is coaching? Coaching is a skill set where you listen deeply, where you suspend judgment, where you ask powerful questions. So, any process that requires these skills will be benefited from coaching. Let me get into some details for the benefit of our audience today. Uh, One of the things that I have seen really companies struggle with is this concept of an IDP, an individual development plan. And a lot of us, make these beautiful IDPs, and they never work because those IDPs are incomplete. People don't really believe in those IDPs. A lot of these IDPs are compliance, so they're imposed on the manager. Now, imagine if you, as an L&D professional, or you as an organization, can really carve out a process where the IDP emerges from a conversation between the manager and the subordinate, a coaching conversation. After the manager asks some thoughtful questions. So, what is the challenging project that you're working on? Who internally or externally are you learning from? What's the biggest challenge that you're excited to face in the year ahead? And then the IDP is drawn up by the coachee. Big difference because the coachee feels that my manager has really heard me out. He or she is really invested in my development, and that will make a big difference. Another big challenge, Bhaskar, that I see is that how can learning transfer to the workplace? We do so many training programs. People learn some new concepts, but nothing changes at the workplace. And that's where this aspect of accountability, which coaching drives, beautifully links to the IDP. So, not just what do you do, but by when, and what are the challenges that you foresee, uh, and what are you going to do about those challenges. So, an IDP is a beautiful use case for coaching, and where the coaching skill set and the mindset can help. The second use case is performance feedback. And feedback is very dangerous because it triggers this fight or flight response. And these days we also hear about the freeze response. So I love to give feedback, but I don't love receiving feedback. It triggers all these very dangerous responses in me. So, how can you really get into a reflective conversation and make feedback a very non threatening and psychologically safe intervention? Third, we do something very interesting at work. We do something called a career dialogue, which is about where do you stand to see your career go few years hence? How do your values, your interests, your strengths align with the role that you're playing and the organization's values? And again, coaching lends itself beautifully. There are so many coaching tools which allow you to explore this space. Next, what I find fascinating is sales reviews. And Bhaskar, you are someone from the sales space, so you must have seen that a lot of sales conversations are very mechanical. They're all about numbers. Have we hit targets? Have we missed targets? Why did we miss? But can you change this into a coaching-led conversation where we're following on the feelings, we're following on the qualitative aspects of sales? What was the thought behind the sales strategy? Where did we execute well? Where did we fall short? What did we learn in the process? Going ahead, what would we do differently? How excited are we about our numbers this year? What scares us about these numbers? So sales reviews can be beautifully blended with coaching conversation. One of the very interesting projects I'm working on, Bhaskar, right now is how do we demonstrate values? And many L&D professionals have to work in this domain of getting employees to live their values. And coaching brilliantly, connects to two values of agility and empowerment. What is coaching if not empowerment? You're trusting that your subordinate and your people have what it takes to really deliver on the organizational mandate. And I love this quote by Swami Vivekanand Bhaskar. Uh, he says, education is the manifestation of the perfection already in man. So the default assumption is that you and I, Bhaskar, are already whole. What we really need to do is unleash that brilliance which is already within us. And this beautifully connects to what Timothy Galway says, where he says that what is performance? It is potential minus interference. So the potential within Charles, Bhaskar, and all on this call is infinite. What we need to do is just subtract interference. And many a times that interference is caused either by us or by something that's happening in the organization. And coaching allows us to explore this path. So it starts off with the assumption that we have in us what it takes to be incredible. So that's one thing. One last application of coaching, in fact, two last. One is around interviews. If you look at interviews, Bhaskar, today interviews essentially are the opportunity for the interviewer to show how smart he or she is. So I try to ask what I call got you questions. So I try to trap you. Let me ask you a smart question and show you that I'm very smart. How, rather than doing this, can we change this into an approach where I'm naturally curious as an interviewer? I'm curious about two things. Is Bhaskar the right person for this role? And is Bhaskar the right person for my organization? And if you shift that, just become more curious rather than trying to outsmart my interview, rather than trying to think that I have more experience, that will be make the interviewing process a lot more safe, a lot more enjoyable, and will really improve your organization's brand. The final case which I want to talk about, Bhaskar, is the exit interview. And an employee is leaving, rather than going through a long checklist of very mundane questions, can you use that opportunity to reflect with the employee that what were some of the things that the employee really enjoyed, what are some of the highs, what are some of the lows. And again, coaching allows for this very safe space for both the person conducting the exit interview as well as the employee to explore each other and have a very honest conversation, which can then help the organization to course correct going future. So a
Absolutely.
lot of
Interview. Yeah, interview should be interview. I view you
yeah,
as a candidate and you
yeah,
view us as an organization and see
correct,
whether it's a right fitment for you.
yeah,
It becomes I view rather than interview. I absolutely
yeah,
agree with you. And you spoke about a lot of use cases, starting with IDP, individual development plan, where again a reporting manager and a team member can have a coaching conversation where they suspend judgment whether the team member will be able to achieve or not, and equally increase the aspiration levels, motivation levels, where it will be self-directed goal setting by the individual rather than the boss saying you should do this in this quarter or in this year. And again, you also alluded on the performance feedback. Many a times performance feedback is given at the end of the year, by the time it's too late, and the person doesn't have a clue where he or she needs to improve or done better, and what is their strength and so on. You're absolutely right. Performance feedback can be continuous and using coaching approach where the manager can be curious what makes the person tick. Yeah. And career dialogue is another one. We call it as development dialogue in some instances, where it's about development of the individual in organization setting. And most often they don't wait for a year to get over. They eagerly look forward to internal job postings and say, hey, if I were to apply, do I have the necessary skills? And they have an open, candid conversation with their reporting manager. And it's again a testimony of the reporting manager to either let go of the person in the interest of their path, or hold on for a little longer before they get really tired of doing the same role again and again, not getting enough support to grow, and they look elsewhere. Sales reviews, again, you're right. I have been doing many of these reviews with my clients in the sales setting. The kind of energy that they get after a group coaching session or a team coaching session is phenomenal. Believe me, their connect with the organization, their engagement with the whole organization tend to improve once they get to know what clarity they get, and how they are going to go about managing expectations. Values, I agree with you. This is where the leaders role model how they can practice these what they are preaching, right? Exit interview, absolutely agree. This is where when the HR manager listens more, they get a better understanding of the unsaid reasons for leaving. Mostly, this is more like following a checklist and recording responses verbally shared by the candidate, rather than exploring deep and finding out what can be fixed in the organization. And there are many more such cases, where coaching as a tool can be utilized. Thank you so much for compiling a wonderful set of cases. In fact, this is if this is the kind of uh, length and breadth in which coaching can be introduced into the organization process, where do we start? This is
Yeah.
one question that can come.
Yeah. So I think the start is always coaching is very contextual, Bhaskar. So I think if I were to start this in an organization, start by diagnosing the current uh, appetite for coaching. And I think the Octopace by Dr. Uday Parikh is a beautiful tool because it it helps you understand the readiness of the organization to some of these very interesting helping interventions. Once you realize that the organization is somewhat ready, uh, then the place to start is at the top, because people
Hmm.
see what
Yes.
leaders do. So get your pilot coaching with your senior leaders. Get them coached. Get them first to experience the benefits of coaching, uh, and once they do that, they will realize the power of a tool where someone is not telling them, but someone is getting them to think and respecting their judgment. And once they do that, let them become internal coaches in the organization. So I think a very clear roadmap: readiness, then starting at the top, and then cascading it in a particular in a particular section of the organization, and obviously then replicating it across the organization.
Absolutely. In fact, it can start right at the chief executive level, or
Absolutely.
sometimes it could also start at a board level or the investor
Absolutely.
level.
Yeah.
There have been instances in my personal experience where I found the CEO is on board, the
Yeah.
entire CXO layer is on board with creating coaching culture. When the investor came to know about this and said, "How all this fluffy stuff? Who started it? Can you uh, help me quantify how this is going to help?" And then the entire initiative was called off or put on hold. It took a lot of time for people to bring out numbers to say how this works. So that's where I think we start at the top, not just at the CEO or a CXO level, but at the investor level, so
Yeah.
that you have enough buy-in at the top, and this can continue show progress and pay more than return on investment on return on expectation. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what are the things that we should not do?
Yeah. I think great question, and I think the biggest mistake that I've seen people do, Bhaskar, and I'm always very mindful of, is we tend to become fanatics because we
Mm.
love something. So one, we start force fitting coaching in everything under the sun. So we say coaching will help everywhere. So please don't do that. It's a powerful tool, but if used wrongly, it can create a lot of problems for you. That's one. Second, uh, realize the essence of coaching. And while I'm a big believer in the process of coaching, and there's a lot of merit to go through something like an ICF journey, but somehow also realize that not everyone needs to be an ICF certified coach in your system. Not
Yeah.
everyone has the time or the patience or the interest to go through. And hence, what is important is so long as your leaders become coach like, they have the mindset of coaching, they may not be coaches in the ICF sense of the term. And let me again give one suggestion, and possibly I'm jumping the gun. I love the work of Michael Bungay Stanier. So Michael Bungay Stanier is the gold standard, because what Michael Bungay Stanier has done is he has distilled the essence of coaching into 7 questions. And you don't need to be an expert in coaching. You don't need to be Bhaskar to appreciate the value of those questions. So can you get your leaders to be more coach-like rather than certified coaches? And again, I'm not saying that they should not be certified coaches, but realize that not everyone would want to go through a certification process of 60 hours.
Yeah. So what is important here is to learn the skill and use it so that you
Yeah.
don't lose it, and
I would
encourage
also say
people.
learn the mindset before the skill, Bhaskar. The skill is easier once you realize that I don't have the answers, and it's so difficult. As a parent, Bhaskar, every day I make this mistake. When I see my daughter loves to color. She loves to draw and color. And the parent within me is so judgmental. The parent says, "Where are the jobs for artists? Please don't do this. Please do maths." So suspending my judgment is so difficult, and I struggle every single day. And with every passing year, as you rise up the organization, we become even more judgmental. We think we figured out, we're so successful. So I think the mindset is the challenging part. The skill set, we can just get Bhaskar and get him to do a training program for you.
Absolutely, very well said. Mindset is a very difficult part to get it first, and many people may not appreciate the long-term benefits of using coaching skill, because it's easy to give away the answer.
Yeah, yeah,
In
yeah,
coaching, we take a approach of helping the person to find their own answers for the questions they're struggling with.
yeah, yeah,
There is a mentor in all of us, there is a teacher in all of us, and there is a coach in all of us. We don't
yeah,
give a chance and opportunity for the coach, perhaps like a uh, gurukul culture that we have in Asia. That is something come in the way at times, where when a team member finds his or her own answer, they find it really powerful, because it is their idea, it is their baby, and they go to any extent to make it work.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So
So
again,
yeah.
Bhaskar, if I may just add a small caveat to what you said, because it's important. The caveat is that while generally coaching is supposed to be non-directive, and I believe in non-directive coaching, but there are certain cultural nuances that one should be aware of. India, Bhaskar, is a high power distance
Yes.
country. So here, many of your coaches will be coming into coaching conversations with the expectation of you giving some suggestion. And in
Hmm.
fact, people will judge you. If you're a manager, now if you're an external coach, it is easy, you can walk away. But if you're a manager, and if Charles as a manager is only going on asking questions, not giving any suggestions, my team members will have a sense of distrust. They'll say, "How the hell did this fellow become a manager? He's only asking questions. He has no solutions at all." So what I like to say is I like to use this term called ABYT. ABYT is ask before you tell.
Ah,
So
nice.
I'm not saying that as a manager coach, you never tell. But I'm saying, can you be the last person to speak in a meeting? Can you be the person who first listens deeply to everyone,
Hmm.
listens
True.
for what is said and unsaid, and only then make some suggestions? Have
Yeah.
you tried this out? Do you think there's merit? And even there, don't put it in a mandatory form. Put it
Hmm.
as an option to them. That
Invitation.
so as an invitation, as a possibility. Many times what happens is we will say, again, we become very, very fanatical. We say ICF has said not to give any solution. So I will not give any solution. Now it works for an external coach to take that very militant stance. Does not work for a manager. does not work for a manager in India, because people will expect it. They'll say, if Charles doesn't give answers, they'll say Charles doesn't know his subject. That's why he's not answering.
There's no
So,
point to go to him again.
yeah. So again, I'm saying good to know the theory, but also know the exceptions to the rule. The
True.
exception coaching is largely non-directive, but in certain contexts, you will need to provide suggestions and invitations to people. So long as you're respecting their right to choose, I think we're good. I think we're
In
still
fact,
great coaches.
I'll add on to that, Charles. When you have assessment, fair assessment that the person does not know different options exist, you could share sources for them to go to, read, and get some more information, and then continue the conversation rather than giving away the answers on a platter. They will
Absolutely.
have a satisfaction of researching and finding their own answers
Yeah,
rather than getting it directly. The power distance, as you rightly said, it is like this. Whether it is India or abroad, anywhere, any country, a manager is always on a higher level of influence. They have a opportunity to influence ratings, performance rating, bonus, and so on. And like water, knowledge flows from a higher place to lower place. That is the
correct.
expectation.
Yeah,
Now, these days, we have reverse mentoring as a reality. People on your team may know more than you.
absolutely.
Be open to that possibility as well. It's not, I like your ABYT, ask before you tell. While we talk about creating a mindset for a manager, there is a question from Ajay Gupta. How do we prepare a person being coached for a coaching conversation? This is
Hmm.
also a two-way road, right? It's not
Yeah,
only the manager to be prepared, even
yeah.
the person who is coming into a session or a conversation need to be prepared as well. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, yeah. So I think from the research standpoint, coachability is a studied concept. And what I love this quote. It says, "When the student is ready, the teacher magically appears." And
Yes.
it's been so true in my life that whenever I wanted to explore something, and I really my intentions were good, a beautiful book came in front, a beautiful person came in front. So I think the first thing I would want to say is that uh, do not force coaching upon every person. And I think when you
The hammer
respect,
on your hand.
yeah, when you respect people's choice to not be part of coaching, you won half the battle. So the people who are coming there, are coming as willing coaches, and that's very, very important. Uh, what we do internally, Bhaskar, is a lot of awareness around why coaching,
Yeah.
what is coaching and why coaching. And I think that awareness typically helps, because a lot of people today, they think, when they're thinking coaching, what they're actually understanding is mentoring, because they
Yeah.
think that some coaching means, uh, they assume it's going to be a cricket coach, or they assume it's going to be a sports coach who's going to talk about technique, who's going to tell you that for a straight drive you have to have your head in the line of the ball. And that's not what coaching, in the sense that what we do. So I think there is a clear need for having some awareness. uh, there is a lot of need for having what I call coachable moments, Bhaskar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coachable moments are that I don't need to have a very structured program. Can I have, as HR, can I introduce, one or two coachable moments in my system? And I think, a mid-year review, an annual review. Let me try and show how they can be converted into coachable moments, and we have authentic conversations. And
True.
Charles, what went right this year? What did you learn? What are you excited about the year ahead? And then suddenly people say that this was a very different conversation, because in this conversation, I spoke 80% and my manager spoke 20%.
Hmm.
Normally, it's the other way around. He's talking and I'm only saying yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And the moment they see that coaching involves them being in the limelight, people naturally would like to uh, become a little more curious about what coaching is.
Absolutely. And when they leave the room of the manager
Yeah,
thinking that they got ideas,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and it is really energetic conversation that they had,
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
more likely to come back.
Yeah, I
And
love
imagine.
this model, Bhaskar. The L&D person in me unfortunately gives a lot of models, so I
Go ahead, go ahead,
apologize. This
go ahead.
model by Dr. David Rock, which is called the SCARF model, and
Yes.
SCARF, S stands for status, so people like to do things which give them status, which give them, that this is my stand in society. C is certainty. People don't like not being sure about what things are. They like certainty. They like to know what are the next steps. A stands for autonomy. Then I like to make decisions for myself. And Malcolm Knowles talks that adults have this self concept. They don't like others imposing their will on them. R is relatedness. People like to speak with people when they get along. And F stands for fairness. People want an inherent sense of fairness. So, how do you build all these scarf elements into your coaching model so that coaches are excited? They realize that there is SCARF for them, and coaching is not it's not HR's agenda, but rather it is their agenda. This is being designed for their benefit. And there's a lot
Yeah,
in coaching which will allow it to happen for the coach's benefit. Can you sell it using the scarf model?
absolutely. I've just typed quickly. This is a wonderful framework for managers as well as team members to keep in mind. When we talk about status and fairness, it's appropriate for us to talk about Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety, especially during this pandemic, being a hybrid team or a remote working team. Establishing psychological safety for every team member is one of the foremost strategic imperative, I should say, of a manager or a leader. So when we talk about psychological safety, especially how it can be permeating across the organization, it's all about how do we ensure people are bringing problems without the fear of repercussion. Oh, if I bring a problem, I will be asked to own the solution as well. The old saying, don't bring a problem to your boss, bring a solution, is no more valid because we are talking through our solution. In a
Yeah,
coaching culture, no one has a complete authority on the subject. And you
absolutely.
bring a problem using a coaching approach, you discover a solution, and that becomes a clear cut path for way forward. And I also remember you were mentioning earlier about work of Edgar Schein, uh, humble inquiry,
Yeah, yeah,
asking question not from a place of authority or knowing the answer. Hey, I'm going to check you now, or
yeah, yeah,
more importantly, it should be from a place of not knowing,
yeah, yeah,
right? That's going to create a magic for team members, and that's when they will want to come back again and again for more such dose of inspiration in daily conversation. Reviews, stand-up meetings, I've had a chance to do stand-up meetings every day during the initial first wave, where so much going on, so many relatives and family members getting impacted in the first wave, same with the second wave as well. People were really having head all over the place. It was difficult to bring focus on what is important, where we need to spend our time, how we can proceed further, and so on. So using a coaching approach could help entire team come closer, come together, even in a hybrid model. So now that brings me to the next question: who will build the cat? The cat is now out of the bag, right? So who can help?
hmm, hmm.
And
Yeah,
what is the role of a leader in creating a coaching culture? Both,
correct,
if you
correct.
could touch
Yeah,
upon.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think a lot of interesting resources, people, and I mentioned one person that I really love is Michael Bungay Stanier, because people today, Bhaskar, are busy. So there'll be a lot of people who will be on this call, who will be listening, who will say, I like this, but I don't have the time to get into something which is long drawn. I don't have the energy. I already have so many things. So can you tell me something which will help me. And from the world of fitness, there's a concept called minimum effective dose, which
Hmm.
says, that if you, what is the bare minimum you can do, which will give you the results, because you don't want to, do 10x the thing. So I think the minimum effective dose of coaching is given in this book, The Coaching Habit, and I would encourage people to read this book. What Michael does a great job with introducing other deeper resources in case you are more curious, in case you want to go deeper. So I think that's a great place to start. Speak to people like me who've made lots of mistakes with coaching, who've read some things but have made a lot of mistakes. They can share. But I think finally, coaching, Bhaskar, is something that you'll have to try out, and hence there's a lot of merit in piloting. Uh, some coaching conversations. The theory can only get you so far. The magic happens when you have these conversations around curiosity, accountability, and trust, because they're people to people, heart to heart conversations.
Absolutely, and there are many comments on the chat window. Thank you, Saraswati. Yes, skills can be learned. It's important to develop the mindset. It becomes ingrained, then leads to become a culture. Absolutely, and as you rightly said, Charles, we start by having a common understanding of what coaching is, what we are trying to practice here as a culture, and it again it depends on what life cycle of an organization the company is in, right? Is it a startup,
Yeah,
right, or is it a established 5 decades or 3 decades old organization
yeah,
moving into the next phase of growth, or is it a high performing organization who is in a real rush to reach the number one spot, or is it a family owned business? Each has its own flavor, and one size fits all kind of a coaching culture formula doesn't work. That's
yeah,
where talking to experts, talking to people who have done similar work really helps as a starting point. And the
yeah,
role of a leader is to champion every time there is a doubt, every time there is a question,
mm,
or a better method of
yeah,
arriving there faster, then the
yeah,
leader should step up and champion.
yeah.
That's the role of a leader, I think.
Yeah. Bhaskar, I want to share something on your question around the role of a leader. And it's
Mhm.
fascinating. Whenever we talk about leadership, we always talk about leadership from the leader's perspective. So you have the trait theories, you have so many theories of leadership. They talk about leadership from the leader's perspective. I want everyone to possibly who's interested to look up this study by Gallup. They did a very interesting study. They said, let's look at leadership, but from the follower's perspective. So they
Hmm.
said, let's find out what do followers want in leaders. These leaders talk a lot about themselves, but let's get into followers. And what they found out was very interesting. They said that all followers look for four things in leaders. One is trust, second, compassion, third, stability, and fourth, hope. And again, if you look at these four very interesting things, how beautifully they can be woven into a coaching conversation. A coaching conversation will help you to build trust with your coachee. You will understand the feelings of the coachee, and you can come with a lot of empathy. It can give you some form of stability as a manager. It can also offer stability to your coachee. And finally, the way forward, or the
Hmm.
W of the grow model, is hope. And it's hope backed by a plan. And that's why the role of a leader from a follower's perspective is to provide these four things. And I think coaching lends itself beautifully, in this context. I again want to just take a minute and talk about a very interesting book that I read, Bhaskar, which got me very excited. The book is No Rules Rules.
Hmm.
And this is about the Netflix culture. It's
Yeah.
about how Netflix, what's the org culture. And two things stood out for me in this book. One was a principle that Netflix uses, which is leaders should lead with context and not with control. And what a
Yes.
beautiful statement for from a coaching perspective. So in coaching, we don't try and control you. We don't try and control. We don't say that this is the right way, please go. That's not
Mm.
coaching. But we try and ask questions around context. So lead with context, not with control. That's one learning which beautifully applies to coaching. The second learning that I had in this Netflix book is they talk about a concept called informed captains. So who are informed captains? Informed captains are the people who are closest to the ground, who will actually take the decision. So in the sales environment, the informed captain is your that sales representative who's going to the pharma, to the doctor, and who's fighting
Yeah.
extra sales. So the person sitting in HO is not the informed captain. This person is. So how can that person sitting in HO trust this informed captain? And the only way I think to do that is by using the coaching approach where he or she can understand the reality, ask thought-provoking questions, and ensure that the person, this informed captain, is feels empowered to make those decisions. And I think that's why good organizations will benefit from coaching in a big, big way.
Perfect, perfect. In fact, I was just thinking about another example where this is a US submarine, one of the finest war machine, where a captain is supposed to hold the control, and it's a command and control chain of command that rules in an army or a war setting, right? There, David Marquet is the one who wrote this book, Turn Around the Ship,
Okay.
where he talks about if you are in the engine room, if you are a navigator, if you are back of beyond in the submarine like a janitor, you know what is best at your work or in your department. As a
Yeah.
captain, I wouldn't know. So he turned around the entire concept of command and control to
Yes.
more of context driven decision making. He would ask questions. It took some time, but the way in this book he goes about talking about creating a coaching culture in an entire submarine is really wonderful to read. And I'm sure we can take a leaf or two into our organization, whichever life cycle our organization belongs to. Yeah,
Absolutely.
whether a startup or an established organization with processes where fairness seem to be driving the process, right? Everyone gets the same treatment. However, that's not typically possible in a highly charged and highly empowered situation. Again, the context drives. It's not about the level. It's not about the hierarchy or meritocracy. It's the debate is not about who knows best rather than who is at the top of the value chain. Yeah. So that's a wonderful way of talking about who is a leader and what leadership means in an organization when it comes to creating a coaching culture. Now let's talk specifically about your domain, human resource function. What is the role of HR in building and fostering a coaching culture? Are they
Yeah.
custodians of the process? Are they
Yeah.
champions of the process? And what role HR you think HR will play?
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm still thinking of this question, Bhaskar. So I don't have a perfect answer, most, but I think HR has a very interesting opportunity of being playing two roles. One role is you want to help your employees do better. At the other side, today HR, we talk about HR being a business partner. So you have the business agenda as well. So how do you link the people agenda to the business agenda? And I think that's where the role of HR would be to ask tough questions. I think that would be there, and ask tough questions not just to the senior leadership, but ask tough questions to themselves. A lot of HR processes many times become rituals, and we've spoken about this. Reviews, career dialogues, performance feedback, and people are disillusioned. People say, "What the hell, yeah? This HR, my HR team doesn't seem to be helping me." And HR has a bad name. So let's put the human back into HR, and
Yeah.
let's ask ourselves, how can coaching help? And again, I'm going to be caution people by saying that I'm not saying introduce coaching everywhere. Maybe sometimes mentoring, maybe sometimes training. But the question is, Are you asking yourself those tough questions on how you can help? See, these are all helping interventions: coaching, mentoring, training, consulting. Finally, there is a benefit there. They all have a time and place. But how do you, as an HR professional, know when to introduce what and introduce it with the right spirit? Not introduce it as a check in the box to show someone that I have done XYZ. And I think the people can see through us that who are the people who really mean these things, and who are the people who are just doing it as a check in the box. So I think the HR has a big role to ask tough questions and to then champion some of these causes right at the top.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Winston, for the formulae. I think it's really nice to know how it all started. Even Professor Reg Rivans, the father, was chief investigator in the Titanic disaster. Yes, the Q factor. Thank you. And to add to your point, Charles, it's not just HR's baby, it's a collective responsibility of the leaders and the organization to foster once it is introduced. And let's talk about this eternal debate. Should we hire an external coach
Yeah,
to trigger this and maintain and
yeah,
sustain, or should we create a capability within the
yeah,
organization,
yeah.
army of internal coaches? What is the right approach?
Yeah. So like all paradoxes of life, people want this or that, right or wrong, left or right. But the answer is that life is in shades of gray, and never in the extremes. And hence, the answer is that uh, it depends on what is your objective. Both have their place. Let me start with an external coach. An external coach brings the big advantage of being a neutral person. There is no agenda that anyone can attribute to this person except what is contracted in the contracting agreement of coaching. So, in certain cases, you need, where neutrality is the core, you need an external coach to come in and be that sounding board. Uh, when you're introducing coaching for the first time in an organization, an external coach will be the person who has the expertise. You may not have that expertise in house. You may need, an ICF coach, or whichever body you're certified from, an external coach to come in with that expertise and initiate coaching in it. But the question that I often ask myself is, should the benefits of coaching only be restricted to a few people in the company? And I feel absolutely not. It is such a powerful tool. And external coaching, master, we all know, is expensive. It's not something that we can easily scale to everyone. So if your aim is to scale coaching, and if you believe that coaching is a leadership skill which every leader should have, then you need to build capacity for internal coaches. And the way to do that is very simple. Start with the external coach, but sooner rather than later, get people to be more coach like. Get them to
Yeah.
think in terms of coaching moments. How do you have coaching conversations? I'm so happy to share that in my organization, my chief operating officer, or our chief operating officer, is right now pursuing his PCC. Big advocate of coaching, and he loves the thing. But not everyone would want to go through lengthy coaching process, and that's not required. Even if they are more coach like, the issue would be there. So the simple answer is, both have their place. But if you don't have internal coaches right now, no problem. Start with the external coach, but definitely think of how to scale it up and get the benefits to everyone.
Thank you, Charles. More than being expensive, I would like to say weigh the cost, value, or benefit of engaging each of them. That would be a right, indicator.
Sure. No, but I also don't want to shy away from the fact that budgets are an issue, Bhaskar. And,
Yes,
and, and
yes.
I'm speaking, so I know the cost pressures that people like me face. And hence, uh, I firmly believe that it's every manager's job to be a coach.
Yep.
And if it's my job to be a coach, then I'm already paid for it. There is an external coach, I have to allocate a separate budget. So expensive in that sense, absolutely. From the perspective of value, a good coach can add multiple times the value compared to the price that you will pay. So no questions about that. But I firmly believe that every manager should be coach like. So why not
Absolutely.
encourage internal coaches?
True. And also, I agree with you on the democratization of coaching, not
Absolutely.
reserved only at one layer, but
Absolutely.
across. And there is one question, I think, what you mentioned about your chief HR officer also going through a coaching certification. There is Mr. Sailesh Lambe. He asks how to handle uninformed HR, where the senior leadership is for coaching culture.
Uh, I'm not sure whether I completely understand the question.
The HR does not know about coaching, but the senior
Yeah,
leaders know about coaching. How do you
yeah,
handle that situation?
yeah. So I think as uh, any professional today, whether you're HR or non-HR, learning is a lifelong process. So if you don't know about coaching, uh, just Google coaching, go into YouTube and type what is coaching, and there are a million resources on coaching. And if your senior leaders are already excited about coaching, it makes your life so much more easier. In fact, it's a big challenge where when HR is excited about coaching, but the senior leaders are not. I think that's where it
This is
gets.
a better problem to have.
Yeah, it's a better problem to have. So be glad you have that problem. And I think platforms like the one that Bhaskar is providing here allow for so much good discussions around coaching. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn. You don't need to be worried at all. There are so many beautiful tools and books which are available. And I've shared one that has touched and inspired me, which is Michael Bungay Stanier's The Coaching Habit. And there are tons and tons of resources.
True. And let me share my experience to answer Sailesh's question. When a family owned business engaged me as a coach, and this question came up frequently, what is the value or what is the return on investment for what we are paying you for? So I was looking at various ROI models and how to quantify the tangible and intangible part. One quick thing that came to my mind and quickly I put it as a report is number of hours spent by the senior leadership team in weekly meetings. Every day, 1 or 2 hours they were spending on meetings, and that cascaded all the way down to their frontline team because their supervisors were not available when they wanted, because they are in a team meeting with the CEO. So CEO took a call and checked on his calendar and diary how many hours he's spending. We figured out that it is 22 hours in a week he is in team meetings with direct reports present in those meetings. So there's a murmur going around in the organization saying, if all the time we are in meetings, when do we get to do our work? Our say do ratio is lopsided. We are saying these things we will do, but we have to get out of the meeting room to do that, right? So this brought a huge revelation or insight for the leader, and he set a target for himself, saying, "I would only do 6 hours of meeting in a week with my direct reports, or any meeting at all." So that brought about huge shift in the entire culture. One single awareness, one insight created ripple effect across the organization, and people started measuring say do ratio in every meeting. So this I quantified it as annual, salary of a leader who is present in those meetings, brought it down to every hour they're spending in meeting. Earlier how much they were spending, now how much they are spending, and what is the cost they are bearing on the coach, and we arrived at a percentage. It came out to be a huge number. Then we decided only 20% of the confidence that it can be related to coaching was filtered, that was applied on, still it came out to be 400%. So you could take certain caselets like this and showcase to your senior leadership team and HR to say how coaching can bring that return on expectation as well as investment. That could be a starting point. Maybe call someone to do a guest lecture in your town hall or a meeting to talk about benefits of coaching and so on. you will have your path carved out from there on. Thank you so much, Charles. We have spent well over 1 hour now. You have been very prolific in sharing your thoughts, ideas, lot of frameworks and references that you have mentioned. I think it will be very useful for all of us as we go forward. And many of these concepts really touched me, though we are in this business for quite some time. It's good to have this refreshing conversation. So, if someone has to reach you, where can they find you and how anyone can reach you?
Yeah, I think I'm on LinkedIn, Bhaskar, so would love to connect with everyone and learn, because this is an ongoing dialogue. There is so much happening in the world of coaching, and we are all blind people touching the elephant at different places and saying it's a rope, it's a tree. So what I've shared, please take it with a bucket full of salt. My biases, my perspectives, and there's so much more there. So happy to continue this dialogue and this inquiry and this learning. LinkedIn is the best place. I think please do reach out.
Sure. Thank you, Charles. I've been really humble. You have shared lots of food for thought. And being a long weekend and that too with festivals around these days, I really thank people who have taken time to join us in this conversation, shared your thoughts, ideas, and comments. Really appreciate that. And until
Yeah,
we meet again, next session, wish you all the best. Thank you, Charles, again for joining
yeah.
us. Bye bye.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Bye.